Hey there, and welcome to Season 4 of Stories Unveiled, the podcast where we believe every story has the power to inspire, connect, and transform. Whether it's through the mundane moments or the life-altering tragedies, we highlight God's story on display in our lives. Each episode, our guests get real and dive into their own personal journey, where we hold hardship in one hand and hope in the other, and we find Jesus in the messy middle. I'm Ashley Sears, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey, it's Ashley here at Stories Unveiled. Before we dive into this episode, I want to personally invite you to our upcoming annual Fall Women's Conference. This is your chance to experience the power of real, life-changing stories, just like the ones here on every episode, brought to life in person. Join us for a full day of hope, inspiration, and connection, featuring incredible regional and local speakers and a moving keynote session, plus amazing uplifting worship. Connect with amazing community partners and browse our curated vendor booths. Don't miss this opportunity to gather, grow, and be encouraged by stories of hope at this fall's Stories Unveiled conference. Register now at storiesunveiledconference.com. We can't wait to see you there. This episode was a live recording of a streamed video chat. Due to streaming variables, please excuse any inconsistencies in this recording. Meshali Mitchell is a portrait artist who believes every human being has a story worth hearing and a story worth telling. Meshali's own story of overcoming adversity forms the foundation of her own powerful story. She's an author of a brand new book, Restored, where she dives into what it looks like to partner with God to transform the broken places of our lives. I am thrilled to have her on this episode. Meshali, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yes.
So you are the author. This is your first book, right?
Yes. Yes. So I tell people it's a whole new season for me. I've been a photographer for close to 17 years now, and my life has shifted in the past couple of years, and I'm in the process right now of releasing my first book. So a whole new world these days over this way.
And it just came out.
It just came out yesterday.
Wow. That's amazing. So it's called Restored.
That's right.
And it talks about, like I said in the intro, partnering with God on how to kind of walk through the broken places of our life.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to back up and talk about what brought you to this point. You've been a portrait artist, like you said, for 17 years.
I have.
And talk to me a little bit about becoming a photographer and what that looks like.
Yeah. So becoming a photographer was kind of an unexpected path for me too. So I tell a lot of people when I'm on these, I get this question, and I was always a creative kid. I was born and raised in small town Arkansas. And so had to we didn't have much going on in our town, kind of had to entertain myself. But yeah, it was always a really creative kid, and just kind of had a knack that grew for photography through my high school years. And I basically saved all the cash I had when I was in high school and into college, and purchased my first ever film camera from Walmart.
Oh my gosh.
Believe it or not. I know if people remember the old school Canon film cameras from Walmart, went in and purchased that. And at that time in my life was basically going around and paying people almost to take their pictures. So I was, asking friends and family, can I take your pictures? You have a beautiful family. And it just started as a creative hobby. And so back in 2007, I think it was, this is kind of a Cliff Notes version of the story, but I had been doing photography as a hobby for a long time. And then it grew to kind of a part-time job that I was doing alongside putting myself through college and working full-time. And it grew and grew and grew. And the Lord blessed it. And I launched full-time what came to be Meshali Mitchell Photo. So I've been doing it full-time since around that time, and really never looked back. So it was an unexpected thing that the Lord brought across my path, and I've loved it.
That's amazing. And you travel all over to photograph, a lot of people.
I do.
Which is just amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I've traveled. It didn't start out that way. Like I said, in 2007, I had been basically paying people to take their photos. And thank the Lord, that shifted over time. So I started with families and was kind of a traditional wedding photographer type, had that sort of business, and that evolved. And about 10 years ago, I began to, through just open doors. The Lord was opening doors with the circuit of Christian speakers, authors, ministers. And so kind of got my foot in the door with that crew of people, and that began to grow. And so now I specialize in, book covers and headshots. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So unexpected. But
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Meshali, about you and growing up and what life looked like before we jump into your book and some of the other pieces, some of these cool pieces about what the Lord's done with your book.
Yeah. So I'm currently a full-time photographer, like I said, living in Texas. But I'm from Arkansas originally. So the listeners and viewers can probably hear a little bit of that.
Yeah. I love it.
I have a little bit of an accent. But,
you have a little bit of an accent. A little bit.
But I was born and raised in small town Arkansas in a minister's home. Had great parents growing up. I was raised in a little bit of a non-traditional minister's home. Most people ask me if I was a PK, like a pastor's kid. But I wasn't. I was an evangelist kid. So we had a full-time ministry home, but a really unique home model, in that my dad traveled all over the world preaching the gospel. He started when I was 2 weeks old. Wow. So he would travel in and out of the home every week, really all over the nation. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, raising me at the time, me and two other younger siblings. So like I said, raised in the ways of the Lord, had good parents, but ministry doesn't exempt you from hardship. I tell people it often makes you feel like you're living in a glass house. And so, we faced some hardship, in our family. And, like I said, a Cliff's Notes version is that we went through a really, really hard divorce of my family, my parents, when I was 12 years old, which 12 is a very hard age in itself. I was the oldest sibling, like I said, and it was kind of in a developmental time for me. So it was like a nuclear bomb went off for all of us. It was a very hard time for not only us kids, but now as I'm an adult, I can look back and see a hard time for my parents and extended family. And divorce is very hard, on everyone that's involved, everyone it touches. It impacted me in a deep way. I still cannot figure out if it's my wiring or the birth order or why it impacted me at such, like I said, a developmental age, but it was almost like the rug got pulled out from under me, in my life and in our ministry. Very soon after that, things were very turbulent already for me. And I went through a season of sexual abuse that I experienced, and was coming out of that. And it just was like hit after hit in my young life and my developmental life. So being a minister's kid and being wired as a perfectionist and really not having the tools to heal at that time, I just did what I knew to do at the time and was surviving. And just kind of continued on through my teen years. And I talk about this a lot in the book, but worked really hard to be okay and have worth and have value and look okay. And I got all the accolades and all the awards and everything you could think of. And those weren't enough to heal me. And so I carried those wounds into my adulthood, even went to Bible school thinking, hey, maybe internally, maybe Bible school will heal me. Maybe I'll be okay and I can look okay. All this narrative was kind of going on in my head, even unaware, I was kind of unaware of it, but that was the engine that was kind of driving me. And got to my mid-20s, and, desperation can be a gift in your life.
Yeah.
And I got to a place mid-20s, even as a believer, where I just was not experiencing the abundant life I knew Jesus had promised me. I was saved, but I was very stuck. In old wounds. I just could not let go of things from my past. And like I said, those narratives were really driving me more than the kingdom narrative was. Yeah. And I came to a point in my life, mid-20s, where I was just desperate. I was desperate to be free and desperate to be healed. And I knew that in John 10:10, Jesus promised abundant life, and I wanted that. And yeah, it's been a journey of restoration, but he drew me into a process of healing at that time that I'm still on. He's done so much for me and in me, and now, through me with this book for others. But I tell people that I help, I'm still on this journey of being restored. And so yeah, that's kind of a Cliff Notes version of what's led me up to this point.
Yeah.
And now I'm here in Texas and restoring this farmhouse and doing photography and all the things. But yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. You say, I don't know if it was, developmental years or my birth order or whatever. I also experienced divorce and kind of sexual, emotional abuse around the teenage years, like 14 years old. And so it's just fascinating. And I'm the oldest as well.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So we have some major parallels in our story.
Yeah. So it's crazy. And as I've walked through, even just since starting Stories Unveiled, which was 7 years ago now, how much I've learned and I've healed and I've walked through, because before it's like, I understand what you're saying. Like you love Jesus and Jesus lives in you and you're a Christian and all of these things. And you're also stuck. And it's fascinating to me how much baggage I've brought to, whether it be my marriage or relationships or even just carried with me just on my own, like the baggage that we carry that you really need to kind of unpack and put away, and heal. And so,
I relate. I so relate to that. That's kind of why I say that desperation is a gift. I tell people in my mid-20s, I came to a place, even in hearing your story, I relate. Like I was bleeding out. I was trying to be okay and look okay as a believer. And I was putting Band-Aids over bullet holes.
Yeah.
And knew when I laid my head on my pillow at night, when it was just me and the Lord, I needed freedom and I needed healing. And so that's really, that desperation is really what drove me to finally seek the healing that Jesus wanted to give me.
Yeah.
So it took that surrender on my part and that humility and just opening my life. And what I talk about in the book is all these rooms of my heart that I had locked and threw away the key and thought, I'll be okay. I can't go there and I can't deal with these, but somehow I'll be okay. And the Lord really was drawing me to those places, into deeper healing. And that's where the soul abundance comes, is when He heals those layers. And that's where the glory comes, in our stories. So,
Well, and because He's not a forceful God, He doesn't force His way into those broken places where we've thrown away the key, right?
That's right.
He waits for us to say, okay, He wants our yes, He wants our surrender. And so to do that and just the action of saying, okay, and unlocking that and inviting Him in, that's freeing, even just that. And so,
absolutely. That's beautiful.
Thank you so much for even just that. But I'd love to hear, there's this correlation between your book, Restored, and restoring the broken pieces in your life. And I think even giving it as a tool for people to read to, restore places in their life. But there's this correlation between, like you mentioned, this farmhouse that you have and you live in, right?
I do.
Tell me about this farmhouse and how did this farmhouse come to be for you, and this journey of the farmhouse and your book and these parallels. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Speaking of unexpected paths, the Lord takes us on. This is another one in my life. But in 2018, I was on the hunt for my first ever, I was going to invest in my first ever home and had my sights kind of set on something new and move-in ready and shiny and all the things. And the Lord had different plans. But no, I came across this 1886 farmhouse fixer-upper that in Texas that in short, needed to be loved back to life. It was owned by a precious family that I've grown to know and love now since the 1800s. So this house stayed in their family line all through the 1800s and 1900s, all the way down until me.
Oh my goodness.
And I know. So it's a very loved home, very cherished home. But, they had they didn't live here anymore. It had become pretty run down and it needed to be loved back to life. And my realtor, who's also a believer and a precious friend, called me on my house hunt. And I was expecting her to say, I found the perfect house. It's move-in ready. You can move in next Tuesday.
It's brand new with granite countertops.
Great. Oh, yeah. Wait till you see these countertops. It's a very different story. No, but like I said, she's a believer and just so in tune with the Spirit of God. And I just respect and love her so much. But she called me. I was actually in Nashville for a photo shoot. And she says to me, hey, I found a house for you. I feel so drawn to it for you. Don't hang up. It's a little bit different than what we've been looking for, but I want to FaceTime you and kind of tell you the story. And so reluctantly I got on and looked at the house, and I'll never be able to explain it other than just it was the Lord, but I felt this drawing to purchase this home and love it back to life, and got back from Nashville, came on site, looked at it, and I tell people I had to have like Holy Spirit blinders on for real, because when I look back now at pictures, I'm thinking, I don't even remember this. You know, I would have said no if I was in the headspace I am now. But I just had blinders on and I saw what could be and should be about the house instead of what was. And I parallel that very much to how the Holy Spirit sees us in our brokenness. He doesn't see us and leave us as we are, but he sees what could be and what should be in us through Jesus. And so I purchased this home, scared to death. I was knees shaking at the time. Purchased the house and began to come in room by room, piece by piece. I couldn't do it overnight. It wasn't an HGTV, move that bus moment, overnight. It was done. And
it was real life.
It was real life. Yeah, it was real life. And I began to go into each room, and it's almost like, well, it is like the Lord knew exactly who to put in this home. You know, the exact giftings he's given me in being a photographer and a storyteller and a lover of words and a girl with my specific story, for such a time as this. I feel like he put me in this home and gave me this vision to love this place back to life. So I began to go in each room and gut it and make it new and restore it and put new furniture in it and, bring it back to the original intent. And, began to do that slowly but surely and began to write about it and take photos of it. And I never knew in a million years it would ever become a book or
really.
No. So I began to just share it online. I just wanted to encourage people, with the current platform I had. And, I began to very much sense that the Lord was speaking to me about the parallel between the home and sanctification and healing and the process of bringing it back to healing and wholeness, and my own story and my heart of how he was going in room by room and piece by piece and making me new and loving me back to life. And so I started writing about it and sharing about it. And I believe the world is groaning and crying out for healing and restoration. And people are dealing with so much brokenness. And so it started resonating and people started writing me about it. And that's how everything was birthed and came to be. So
you did not think you had a book in you?
I've always been open to writing a book. I've always loved books and loved to write.
Yeah.
But I never in a million years through this process knew that it would become a book. Yeah. I thought maybe I'd write about photography or write about, I wasn't sure. But whenever I bought this house, the Lord was pulling off in Ephesians 3:20, I say, more than I could ever ask or dream or imagine. Mm-hmm. And he still is, so now we have a book out of it, and I pray it ministers to people, and that any sorrow or pain I went through, I've prayed that I've asked the Lord that payback, that he would restore things to me in that way, that now I could help others in their pain, to bring them out.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. How God's just so amazing. Like
he is.
How he works and how he does things, and when we don't even know or see, and here you just thought you were buying a 1800s farmhouse because you were just looking for an investment, to move into and call home for you, but really he was clearing out the stuckness, in your own heart and opening windows and doors and all of the things to heal you as you're doing the same for this house. And how amazing it is, because restoration to me means made new, right? It's not back to the original form, or it's not the old. It's not restoring things, whether it's our own hearts or an old farmhouse. You're not trying to bring it back to its original, state, like when it was built. You're making it new. And I just feel like that's amazing, because that's what God does with us, right? He makes us new and rewrites our story. I've actually heard you, because I do follow you on Instagram. And I've heard you recently, I think it was in an interview or something, that you said, restoring is like restoring. Like he rewrites your story. And, as long as you still have breath in your lungs too, our story's not over. And so to be able to live that out, I just think it's amazing what you are doing in this book and everything.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Every time I pass, I've said on other podcasts too, like every time I pass that book, I look at it now in a new way, and it's like the Lord's revealed it in a new way to me. And I see the word restored. Because that's what he does in us and through us, is he restores us, and he gives us, there's a kingdom narrative that arches over our lives when we become believers that he's called us to partner with, instead of a narrative of wounds or trauma or those cycles. He's called us into this kingdom narrative, and he restores us. Tell
me what it's meant to you to read this book, and like how it hasn't been out long. So, but you've had people read it prior to launch and all of those things. And just what does it mean to you to have this out in the world? Because while I have not written or published a book, I do know that writing kind of fillets your soul open a little, it's you out on paper. Tell me what that's kind of meant to you, or how you've felt.
That's a perfect way to put it. I haven't heard it said that way, but fillets your soul, and kind of I had an author friend tell me, she checked on me last week, and she said, "Hey, are you doing okay?" She said, "I just wanted to check on you, because when you write and publish a book, it feels like you're walking out in front of the world naked."
Yeah.
And I'm checking
so
on
vulnerable.
That. And I told her, I said, that's exactly how I feel. Because my wiring already is a bit, there's a bit of vulnerability to me, but I'm a bit of a private person. I'm an introvert living in an extrovert world right now, I feel like, so each day I'm kind of processing. Right now in this launch season, I'm just kind of processing each day and surrendering things to the Lord, because it does require this of me to open up my life in a whole new way. And so I'm full of faith. And one of the things that is fueling me is I've been writing, this book for a couple years, and now it's out. And we had our launch team, and, they had early access. So they've read the book. My family members have read the book. Other close friends have read the book, and now others that are out are reading the book. And I'm starting to get feedback now on how much this book is ministering to me, and this is changing me. And so that is a whole nother level now for me of fuel to the fire. Now that I'm seeing, they say, I've heard it said, and it kind of, it's like coffee mug Christianity, quote, that, your pain is going to preach.
Yeah.
I believe that. And so it's cool, because I'm kind of in a new season right now of this whole, like, your pain is going to preach, and I'm believing people are going to be freed and healed through this book. And so it makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a whole new season for me. And I'm kind of just now, like, even being able to process it out loud. It's a whole new thing.
That's amazing. Well, and I just love it because, like we chatted about before we even started recording, Stories Unveiled, the platform in and of itself that we started 7 years ago, was for this very thing, to offer a platform for people who maybe are heavily connected like you in certain areas. And I mean, we have people on the podcast and at our events that are they're moms, they're teachers, nobody but their circle knows their name. Meshali Mitchell is probably better known name than other, than some maybe right here in Boise or whatever, but every single person has a story. And I feel like God can use any story and he can redeem any situation. And I just feel like it's so important to be able to offer this platform and give glory to God where he redeems and restores all of the broken pieces of our life, because everybody walks through really hard things. Like life is hard.
Absolutely.
And trauma and betrayal and just so many things. It's like to open those. I like how you say you locked it, you locked the doors and you threw away the key, and he slowly started going in room by room, just like you did with the house. Like if we invite him and allow him in and we partner with him instead of fight him,
absolutely,
restoration can happen. And our, like you said, your pain will preach. He takes our mess and makes it our message. It's all, it's like coffee cup Christian. I love that.
But it's so good though. I feel like it's kind of taken away from it, but those statements are so true and they hold so much power. Yeah. Yeah, they're true.
And the moment we allow God to use it and say, okay, I'm going to step into vulnerability and step out of fear. And I'm just going to share the story that God has written on my life, all the pain, all the mess, because look what God can do with it.
Yes, absolutely.
Can so help and heal other people. And so I just think that it's amazing.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. I'm like, yes and amen to everything. So good. And love your ministry.
Thank you.
So powerful.
Thank you. I'm honored that the Lord has given it to me. And two, for me, I started it from a place of brokenness.
Yeah.
It just, the Lord, I went to him in a cry and was like, my marriage was falling apart. My husband was addicted to sex and pornography. And I didn't know if I was going to stay. We had 3 children and I was like, I'm not doing this. I can't do this, And so it was a really hard season. And it wasn't until real healing started to happen, both in myself because of all the baggage I brought, but my husband and all of the stuff that all of his addiction and all of the things, when real healing started to happen in ourselves, not in our marriage, but just in our own hearts.
Yes.
We were able to look at each other and say, like, are we doing this? Are we staying together or what?
Yes.
And we allowed God to heal us first, and then we could rebuild from there. And so we celebrate 20 years this summer together.
I celebrate that with you. Truly. That is amazing. Hearing just a little bit of your story, I celebrate that. That's incredible.
Thank you. And, and it's hard to do the hard work, but it was like 7 years ago when everything came to a head. And as we started to journey through, it was like, man, we can't be the only people dealing with this.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be the only man who is struggling with this. Like, I can't be the only woman who feels left and betrayed, And so we started allowing God to like clean out those rooms and to just give him our yes and say, okay, we're going to share this regardless of how hard it is. And I was in full-time leadership pastoral ministry, and my husband was an elder. And it was like, well, we're going to let the skeletons out of the closet because who else is going through this?
That you did. Thank you that you were brave enough and, like I said, desperate enough to do that.
Yeah. Well, when you don't talk about it and you leave it, when you leave it locked in that, in that room or that closet, it can't heal. You can't, it just, for some it grows, And so just coming from broken places and just allowing God to redeem it and walk through that. Thank you so much for just your story and your book and what you're doing.
Yeah, we're on the journey together, sis.
Yeah.
Everyone I've talked to about the book has said that. I mean, I was almost paranoid to share my story. I had to kind of work through that, to be that vulnerable in the book. But I've noticed something really fascinating, that when people are reading my story, most people aren't even seeing me. They're seeing themselves. Yeah. And they're seeing the Lord. Mm-hmm. And that's my prayer, really. I want to, I want to move out of the way. And
it's not about you, right?
Exactly.
It's about them and their healing, and it's about Jesus.
Yes. So, because I wanted to self-protect and not even write the book. And I thought somebody else can do that, but like you said, the Lord's given me this story and I'm stewarding it. And, but that's been really fascinating to me. And that's what maybe somebody needs to hear, that, and sharing your own story. People see themselves in each other's stories. Yeah, they do. And the Lord. And so, that's been my prayer and my hope in this book, is that people will see themselves and meet Jesus in those rooms of their own stories and find true healing and get to the root of some of these wounds that they feel stuck in.
Yeah.
And let the Lord lead them into like abundance and real healing.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I just have one more question for you, and it's actually how I end every podcast episode. Yeah. What would you tell somebody who needs some restoration, who needs to unlock those doors and invite God in? What encouragement do you have for them?
Yeah. Well, the restoration journey, I know in my own life, when you've dealt with, I say big T, little t, there's all sorts of wounds. And pain is relative. All of it matters to God because it matters to us. Mm-hmm. But the restoration journey, when you feel stuck, can feel overwhelming. So I just encourage people, first off, I say grace in those areas that you feel so stuck and so wounded. Jesus will meet you there where you are, as you are, and he loves you as you are. And I just encourage people to start today. You know, it can be overwhelming. It can feel like I have all these, a lot of times in a restoration journey, you can name a million things that you need to make right and get right. But start today, wherever the Lord's leading you today, do that and say yes again tomorrow. Yeah. And then say yes again the next day. And you'll soon look up and you'll see progress.
Yeah.
You know, and so, grace.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, we will put in the show notes where to find your book.
Awesome.
I'm assuming you can get it on Amazon. Yeah. All the places, but we will have in the show notes where they can find you and where they can find information, even maybe about your photography, but for sure where to buy your book. So
awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. I just appreciate you and your story and your vulnerability and for saying yes.
Yeah.
For just
thank you. You too. You've encouraged me today. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for today's conversation on the Stories Unveiled podcast. We would love it if you would leave us a rating or a review. If you would like to learn more about Stories Unveiled and our events, go to storiesunveiledconference.com or follow us on Facebook or Instagram at storiesunveiled_. The Stories Unveiled podcast is created in partnership with KTSY and Barefoot Media Ministries. For more encouragement and other podcasts, visit ktsy.org. Have an incredible day and go live unveiled.